The Delehey Method. Build, tell, stack the deck. It's the method that I created over, now at this point, 15 plus years of helping students reach their full potential. The idea behind the Delehey Method, it's pretty simple. We build the type of students and people colleges chase. We don't necessarily chase colleges. And although you might be saying, what is he talking about? It sounds all the same. It's different. It's a lot different. And I think it's important that families realize it's different, because the college admissions world these days, in my opinion, is far too focused on what will impress colleges, what will impress college admissions departments, not as focused on building the type of student who, as a byproduct, when they grow, when they transform, the top colleges come saying, hey, we want you. It's just a different approach. And so I personally have coached over 1,400 students. My team has coached over 4,100 students. And the Delehey Method wasn't built overnight, but we use it consistently, and we have for many, many, many years now. And what's interesting is I didn't know the Delehey Method when I went through it. There were aspects actually that I did not perfectly go through myself. A little bit of background. I was a high-performing, really high school junior. So let's start in 2009. I had lofty goals. I wanted to go to a top college, but I was a grind student, a real grind student. And in junior year, I kind of hit my peak of burnout. I was a 3-sport varsity athlete. I was taking most of the hardest classes in my high school, AP honors classes. I was studying for both the SAT and ACT. Quick aside, we would never, ever, ever coach our students to do that. That is inefficient. I could not pick a test, so I just kept studying for both. Inefficient, wrong. But that's what I was doing. I was in the very little free time I had, which was basically no free time, I was volunteering. I did moot court. And to be honest, I did not sleep a lot. A good night of sleep was 6 hours. I was probably more averaging 5 hours. And thinking back on it, my goodness, what was I doing to my 16-year-old growing body? But that was where I was. And so I'm going to tell the order here in this video of when I myself discovered the 3 stages that we now teach all of our families. Build, tell, stack the deck. When did I discover these for the first time? I obviously would have loved if when I was 16 years old, someone had said, hey, Jack, here's what you need to do. A clear framework in an environment of accountability, fun, and action-taking. And we're going to walk you through these 3 steps. Build, tell, stack the deck, and you are going to become the type of student the top colleges in the country chase. How about that? I would have said, yes, I need a plan. Thank you. But I didn't have that. And so these 3 tiers that I'm going to walk through, I had to discover on my own. And I discovered them in actually a different order than that. And I'm going to go chronologically. So now let's get back. Junior year. Spring of junior year. I remember it so well. I was actually in Logan Airport in Boston, taking a trip with my dad to see colleges. We visited University of Richmond, we visited Wake Forest, we visited Duke. And it was in that airport when I was just feeling completely and utterly burned out. And I remember Googling on, I think, my dad's laptop. The background is, I thought, is there a better way? Is there a better way to try to reach my wildest dreams here? I'm a high school junior. I know next year is going to be like college application year. Is there a better way besides just continuing to grind, be sleep deprived, and feel like I was just kind of on this hamster wheel? And so I Googled the following phrase, and it's an important phrase because we can flash it up on the screen. It happens to be the exact title. So Google SEO. It was the first thing that popped up. I Googled how to become a straight A student. Now, to be clear, I was a really good student, but I was not a perfectly straight A student. And in fact, I remember at that time I was going through what, besides like BC Calc, was probably known as the hardest class in my entire high school. And that was pre-calc, honors pre-calc. Miss Patton, shout out to you. Amazing teacher, unbelievably hard class. Incredibly hard class. And I was struggling. And I remember I was not getting an A. And I remember thinking, between this class and just all of the other incredibly like high honors AP level classes I'm going to, I'm so burned out. I would love it if there was a system I could apply to become a straight A student. Like, I know that if I went to any individual teacher, they'd help me with the nuances of let's go over this homework problem. But I wanted a higher level than that. I wanted a system to become a straight A student regardless of the subject. So I Googled how to become a straight A student, and what popped up on the screen was the very first time in my life I was introduced to what is now, in the Delehey Method, Build. Cal Newport wrote a book titled How to Become a Straight A Student. What's funny is in 2009, when I found this, Cal Newport was not who he is now. Side note, in 2013, this will be a story for another video, but in 2013, I cold emailed him, said how much he had changed my life. We met up in person. We had about an hour and a half, breakfast together in Washington, D.C. One of the highlights of my life. But now we'll get back to the story. So it's 2009, and I ordered that book, Amazon Prime it. When I come back from my college visits with my dad, it's on the doorstep, and I devoured it. I mean, to be honest, I was like at my brink, and I needed something. So I devoured it. And then I read it again, and then I read it again. What's interesting, let me actually see here. I'm going to see if it's still, my exact version is still up here. Oh, it is. The exact version. How cool. This is the exact version from 2009. Take a look at this book. Let's find. Look at how worn my highlights are. You can see that. Look at how worn this book is. This book changed my life. My notes. That's my 16-year-old handwriting. Wow. It's awesome to see. So here's the book. This is the exact book that arrived on my doorstep in spring of 2009 that changed my life. What I now realize as a 34-year-old telling you this story is this was the first time in my life I said, I am struggling with this area of life. Can I figure out a plan on my own, like without my parents' involvement? Learn the plan, do the plan. What's really cool is I got to see the outcome of that plan. Completely changed my life. What this taught me is now one of many avenues of the build section to the three-part Delehey Method. Build, tell, stack the deck. This was the first time I learned any bit of semblance of how to build myself from the ground up. Foundational study habits, high leverage activities, things like this. I learned that there was a way I could become a straight A student regardless of the subject. By the way, many teachings in here are now in the teachings that we teach our students. We have received feedback from many students that several of the lessons that I pulled from here in 2009 that changed my life have now changed their life. Over a decade later, it's pretty cool. Well over a decade later. So I read this book voraciously between basically spring of 2009, and I probably read it 3 or 4 times between spring of 2009 and fall of 2010. Let me tell you, fall of 2010 rolls around. September 2010, I had just turned 18. Jack Delehey 2.0 arrived in high school, and it was amazing. I had this, what this book gave me, I had this new clarity that I could walk into the doors of my high school every day and have a structure to follow. Not flying by the seat of my pants. Not studying until 2 a.m. every day, wondering, did I do enough problems? This book taught me things like when my studying was over. Yeah, that's a thing. When my studying was over, I could say, I know it's only 6 p.m., but I did my study plan. I know I will get an A. And then the next day I'd walk into class and I'd get an A. At some point, we'll actually see if we can bring my high school physics teacher on. My high school physics teacher, he was actually just at my wedding a couple months ago, and he got to witness the profound effects of this. That's all I'll say there. So I learned how to build, and I only learned a section of how to build, but it entirely changed my life. I worked for probably a third the time I had junior year. Guess what? I smiled again. I was happy again. I slept 8 hours a night. I hung out with friends. I had a girlfriend for the first time. I was a really genuinely happy student, and you know what's the crazy thing? I performed far better in the classroom. I got straight A's, and it felt weirdly easy. So, spring of 2009 was the first time I learned that you can actually apply tactics to yourself inside the classroom, and learn to build foundations that eventually, ideally, your dream college will say, we recognize those. Spring of 2009 was when I first learned how to build. Now let's go chronologically. I would love to sit here and say, oh yeah, the next thing up, I learned how to tell. I learned how to tell my authentic, genuine story. Nope, I didn't at all. Now, I was a good writer. I was detail-oriented. So I'm not going to sit here and say like my Common App that I eventually put together that I applied to, some of the top schools in the country with was bad by any means. But I had no idea what to do with the additional information section. I'm not positive. See if I can go back and find a PDF of my Common App. But I'm pretty sure I just left it blank. The additional information section is a beautiful section that you can use to tell your story, but I didn't know. So tell did not happen. Next. The order of events is, let's fast forward now. I learned how to build in spring of 2009. I applied it in fall of 2010. 2009 into 2010, got straight A's, changed my life. The next thing I learned was actually not tell, so we're going to skip over that one. It is stack the deck. Fast forward to April of 2010. I'd applied to a lot of schools. I'd applied to Ivy League schools. I got rejected from Ivy League schools. My early decision school was Duke. I applied to Duke. I got deferred. Then I eventually got rejected. Anyway, I found myself waitlisted at Vanderbilt University, where, yes, fast forward, most of you watching this will know that's where I attended. Now, I want to give a shout out to the Drum Ghouls in Concord Center in Concord, Massachusetts. The Drum Ghouls, they, like, from time to time would help me with, like, college coaching insights, far from kind of what we typically do with students these days, where it's like a 4-year program and very consistent, that type of thing. But they were kind of my sounding board for advice. And the Drum Ghouls said the following phrase to me that we still use with our students. So I'm giving them full credit for this. They said, Jack, the wait list is not a wait list. It is a proactive list. That moment that they said that to me in April of 2010 was the very first time, without realizing it, I understood the notion of stack the deck. Stack the deck is all about using strategy when it comes to the college admissions world in the United States to your favor. That is what stack the deck is all about. And in spring of 2010, when I was waitlisted and the Drum Ghouls said the waitlist is not the waitlist, it is the proactive list, I said, what do I have to lose? So I applied several tactics because my whole notion was like, what do I have to lose? I'm waitlisted. So if I try a bunch of things and I stay waitlisted, so be it. By the way, I'd put my deposit actually at Tulane, and I was going to Tulane. I had an extensive scholarship to go there, and I was very happy to go there, but I was striving to be the best version of myself. And so I said, it's a no-brainer. If I get into Vanderbilt, I'm absolutely going. Let's see what I've got. And so I reached out obsessively to Vanderbilt's admissions department, and I let them know that if I happened to be accepted, I would attend. Now, only later did I realize how much some schools care about their yield percentage. Little side note here, just so you all know, the yield percentage is the percentage of students that a school accepts who end up attending. You can take a look. Let's see how good I am with this. Harvard has the highest yield percentage in the country, and I believe it is 82%, which actually is lower than I would think. But my guess is that 18% delta just comes from students who get into Harvard, but then they also get into another amazing school and have like a full ride. But Harvard has an 80+% yield percentage. Schools are chasing this metric. Why? It feeds into their U.S. News and World ranking, but also just from an effort perspective, it kind of stinks to like review a student's profile, be like, yes, we're going to take them off the wait list, and then have them be like, no, I don't want to come. So it hurts their yield percentage because then they have to report that they offered admission to someone who said no. So that's an 0 for 1. But also just from an effort perspective, it kind of stinks for them. So I made it very clear. Hey, Vanderbilt, I'm going to attend. And I made it very, very, very clear. And I won't go into like the details, but just let it be known that Vanderbilt heard from me more than they heard from any other person on the wait list. Because again, my methodology was just like, who cares? I'm going to wait for them to tell me to like stop reaching out to them. Now, I just want to give a caveat. In 2026, a lot of these methods are different, slightly. A lot of, we've watched I'm talking about 2010 here. It's been 16 years and things are different. A lot more schools now basically put in their waitlist notifications, please do not reach out. Please do not. If you get that, please do not reach out. It's less about this individual moment and more about what this represents, which is there are tactics and strategies to stack the deck in your favor. And this was my first insight into that. So May 1st, 2010, I got called off the wait list. I remember it to this day. My mom called my cell phone when I was at school and said, there is a message for you on the home answering machine. Yes. And I raced home. I don't even know if I left class. I probably did. I probably just like left school. And I drove home and I listened to the answering machine. And it was a Vanderbilt admissions rep. And they were like, call me back. And so called him back. And the gentleman on the other end of the line, if somehow you're watching this, I would love to know your name. That would be very fun for the story. I don't remember your name. But you told me, you said, my goodness, you, Jack Delehey, are relentless. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? And he's like, we are pretty sure that if we offer you admission off this wait list, you're going to attend. Pretty sure, based on what we've just seen from you over the last month, basically of April. So you, Jack, are call number 1 off the wait list. You are number 1. And he said that. He said that to me. Now, at the time, I remember, I was like, oh, that's cool. But it's interesting looking back, right? Now as a 34-year-old, I look at that and I have this entire build, tell, stack the deck framework that I walk students through over multiple years. And that was a big moment in realizing that, wow, tactical efforts I made led to me getting off the wait list. Not just getting off the wait list, being call number 1 off the wait list. And if I hadn't done those tactical efforts, potentially my entire life could be changed. I might not have gotten off the wait list at Vanderbilt, and that was because I stacked the deck. And to be clear, there are many, many, many ways you can stack the deck in college admissions, and that's not for this video. This video is about the first time that I learned my own lessons. Spring 2010 was the first time I learned about stack the deck. May of 2010, May 1st of 2010 was the first time I learned that stack the deck works. There'll be another video on many, many lessons inside stack the deck, things that you can do in today's college admissions landscape to stack the deck, to know the rules of the game. That was my first time I realized, wow, that worked. By the way, then for many, many years, people kind of heard that I was like the waitlist whisperer. I don't know. And younger students from my high school would call me and be like, I'm waitlisted. I started 9 for 9. If you include me, my first 9 students. And by the way, that was all just done for free. I would get calls while I was at Vanderbilt's campus as a freshman, then a sophomore, then a junior. Like, hey, I'm waitlisted. I heard you might know. It's like, go through my waitlist. I basically turned it into like a mini waitlist program. I started out 9 for 9. Just so you know, college admissions changes. Those same tactics don't work nearly as effectively anymore, nor do they, and a lot of schools actually just say, can't do it anymore. But that's okay. We transition, we change. The bigger theme of this story is if that stack the deck method starts to dwindle, there will be more that pop up because college admissions is constantly evolving. But yeah, started 9 for 9 if you include me, which is crazy. Some point in time, we might get some of those students on here to talk about that. Those 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013-ish days of like me just helping younger students for free and then them calling me a month later and being like, I got in. By the time I got called like 7 and 8, I was like, yeah, I know. It just works. So that's stack the deck. Build, tell, stack the deck. You've now learned build. I discovered for myself without knowing what it was in spring of 2009. Stack the deck. I discovered for myself without knowing what it was in spring of 2010. So when did I learn tell? I learned tell in the spring of 2013. I remember it. I know exactly when I learned tell. Now, you're probably saying, wait, Jack, you went to college in 2010. You were there from 2010 to 2014. So you're already at college. So how does this apply? It applies. It just applies in a different manner. I would love to sit here and say, I learned tell in 2009, right before I filled out my whole Common App, and so it was perfect. But it wasn't. I learned the power of telling an authentic, genuine, standout story in the spring of 2013 when I was applying for summer internships on Vanderbilt's campus. So, to give you some context, I'd gone through freshman year at Vanderbilt 2010 to 2011. I'd gone through sophomore year at Vanderbilt 2011 to 2012. I then actually went and had an amazing 4 months of my life on a program called Semester at Sea where I studied abroad. And then I came back to campus and it was kind of a whirlwind coming back from studying abroad, but I came back and all of my peers were talking about internships. And to kind of get thrown back into that high performing environment, I remember really just feeling overwhelmed and I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. And so I had heard about, this, if you like, the two industries that it seemed that every high performer at Vanderbilt was trying to go into because they're the most lucrative, at least at the time, were you either go into finance or you go into consulting. I like the sounds of consulting better. I'm entrepreneurial by nature, and consulting just sounded like you basically get flown in and plopped in a struggling company and you have to figure out how to help it. And to me, I was like, oh, so it's like a new puzzle every 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long your projects are. I was like, that sounds kind of fun. Let's do that. It wasn't that much more thinking than that. And so I put together my first real resume and then I submitted my applications to all of these summer internship opportunities. And to be clear, especially when applying for internships for some of these top companies, the top companies all came to Vanderbilt to interview. But when applying to internships, they legitimately would offer 1 or 2 spots. And I can't even fathom, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applicants for 1 or 2 spots. Basically, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm just going to guess it was probably 300, 400 applicants who then get pared down to 20 or 30 interviews. And then they give out 1 or 2. And so a lot of my peers were applying. I applied, classic resume, cover letter, and then you kind of wait to see if you get an interview. Well, fast forward a couple weeks. This is now winter of 2013 into spring of 2013. And what do you know? All my peers are like, did you get the rejection letter? Did you get the rejection letter? Like, these are really smart people at Vanderbilt. I open up my inbox. We'd love to have you for an interview. I was a good student at Vanderbilt, but I'm looking across the table at some of my peers who were way smarter than me, at least in my opinion. Probably had better GPAs than me. Why did I get the interview? Why was I one of the, 10 or 7% chosen for an interview, whatever it was? So I go to the interview. And by the way, these interviews are for, I'll call out one of the, top companies that I got an interview for was Bain. They call it in the consulting world, the big three. It's kind of like one of the three, Bain, McKinsey, BCG, or where everybody wants to go. And also, Deloitte and others. And I got interviews everywhere. And then I got passed through to the final rounds everywhere. And it was in that one of those stages between first stage and third or fourth round interview. It was kind of more of an open conversation with the individual and who was on the other side of the table at Bain or at Deloitte. And they told me right there, they said, I remember the Bain person, so I'll call this out. They said, Jack, your GPA was in line with what we'll consider at Bain, but I'll just be honest, you were below, our typical, you don't have straight A pluses, you've got some A minuses, that type of thing. But what stood out with us is Bain strives itself on being fairly entrepreneurial, and you ran an exterior painting company in high school, and we saw that on your resume, and then you talked about it in your cover letter and how profound that was in helping you become who you are. And that really resonates with what we're looking for at Bain. So I remember sitting there, and that was the moment. In my head, I said, it's how you tell your story. Any of our students in our program right now are listening. They have heard me and our coaches say that phrase. It's how you tell your story. I was not the best candidate academically. There were students, they admitted to me, who had better GPAs. There were students who were taking harder classes at Vanderbilt. I got the interviews. Because I had a unique, authentic, differentiating story that aligned with Bain's mission. You can go and Google it right now. If you Google the big three consulting firms, it's known that Bain prides itself on being kind of more on the entrepreneurial spectrum. So when I talked about running an exterior painting company in high school, which I did, loved it. So much fun. Ran it with two of my best friends, painted houses every summer. It was genuine. It was authentic. It was different. And this now serves as the foundation for what is to date probably, if you ask some of our students who have gone off and are at Ivy League schools of their own, if we were to interview some of them right now and ask what was the most profound lesson in our entire multi-year curriculum, the Delehey Method, teaching you build, tell, stack the deck in that order, my guess is most of them will say the different is greater than difficult exercise. I created the different is greater than difficult exercise. And I remember when I was creating it, I had that Bain interviewer. I had him in mind when he sat across the table from me and told me why I had made it to basically the final three. It's how you tell your story. Now, I'll actually share with you, I made it to the final two. And they gave the offer to someone else, and they waitlisted me in this purgatory zone. And then eventually they were like, he took the offer. We're only going to give one spot. Sorry. Come back next year. I made it the next year, senior year, all the way also to the final. They gave 3 regular spots and I was number 4, same waitlist thing. And anyway, it ends up being a huge part of my journey. Who knows? If I had simply been accepted, I was, suit and tie, Bain person, maybe I wouldn't be running this company today. And so I'm very, very grateful that basically I missed out both times by 1 spot. Very grateful, unbelievably grateful. And yet, how cool that even in that, I guess, quote unquote failure, I was able to take from that what is now literally one of the 3 most profound stages of our multi-year coaching efforts. It's how you tell your story. So that's my story of when I discovered build, tell, and stack the deck. The goal that I've made it for my team is to help students younger than that discover, build, and tell, and stack the deck so that they can have enough time to be able to use it in a fun, stress-free manner to eventually become the type of person, the type of student top colleges desperately want on their campus. You do not need to have to wait until spring of junior year to discover the first for yourself, and then spring of senior year to discover the second for yourself, and you do not need to wait until junior year in college to discover the third for yourself like I did. You can do it better than me. That's the goal. That's our mission. The Delehey Method, build, tell, stack the deck in that order. Hey, the last one I discovered was tell. Different is greater than difficult exercise. There's actually a lead up to the different is greater than difficult exercise that's even more powerful, and it's called the Saturday morning test. I actually took the notion from the Saturday morning test from my good friend Cal Newport. Cal Newport talks about the Saturday morning test. I've tweaked it to be applicable to high schoolers, but it helps students really start to think about their authentic passions, what they're interested about, and how perhaps they might want to use those authentic passions to eventually tell a profound story. Kind of like the same way I used painting houses in high school to tell an authentic story to Bain. A high schooler can use something that they do in high school to tell an authentic story to colleges. And if you're saying, yeah, that sounds great, but what's the first steps of that? Saturday morning test. We have an entirely free exercise. You can check it out. Click the link in the description. It'll help you if you're the parent, but mostly it'll help your child. So if you want, download it, text it to your child, send the URL to your child. It'll be in Google Docs form. Have them do it. Have them really do it. It shouldn't take too long, but it's a pretty profound test to go through that really has students think. Quick little hint here. It has them actually think about what they would do if they could not open their phone or look at a screen. I know, crazy in 2025, about to be 2026 for that. So that's the background of the Saturday morning test. You can grab it right there. And until next time, cheers.